After plenty of discussion, mystery, intrigue, and more, it's now finally upon us. We now know when the White Rabbit mystery will be finally solved. When will we find out the identity of the White Rabbit? We're going to talk about that. Plus, have we now had a confirmation on who the White Rabbit is? Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE, and of course, I can barely talk. Of course, right now, the biggest story in WWE is the White Rabbit mystery. Who is the person behind the White Rabbit minigames, mysteries, cryptic videos, QR codes, and more? Wow, in the last couple of minutes or so, we have some breaking news about the White Rabbit, when it is expected that the White Rabbit will be revealed, the mystery behind all of these cryptic videos. When is that person going to reveal themselves? We have the latest news on that. Plus, we also have the latest on news on who is the person, who the identity of the White Rabbit themselves. So let's get straight into this. This is a story, as I mentioned, that's been just released in the last maybe 30-45 minutes or so ago at the time of recording this video. It comes from Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, of course. Be sure to check it out. It's a Patreon service, so be sure to subscribe if you want to get the latest details and the latest news. Spoiler warning ahead, because this does contain some pretty spoilerific details on the White Rabbit reveal and mystery. Now, Fightful Select is reporting that not everyone was actually sold on the QR aspect of the White Rabbit teasers that we've seen in recent weeks. Now, if you're not familiar with that, of course, we saw those QR codes on Monday Night Raw beginning a couple of weeks ago. We had the situation whereby there was a QR code in the background of an Austin Theory backstage segment. There was also then a QR code in the crowd of Monday Night Raw. Someone actually held up a sign that had the QR code that took you to the game of Hangman. Of course, on SmackDown this past Friday, there was a QR code in a backstage segment involving the Street Profits and Hit Row. On the backstage screen, there was a QR code that flashed up. I believe there was also one, actually a physical one, that was stuck to something. That led you to the game of sort of Pac-Man. This past Monday on Raw, of course, the QR code flashed on the screen for about half a second. There was also a QR code that was on the announcer's table that took you to the TikTok video, which was "Who Killed the World? You Did. Feed your head," and led to, among other things, a zip code to the town of Windham, Maine. That's Bray Wyatt's real name. It also led to situations like the White Rabbit Records, obviously Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit song. The others led to there was coordinates to the Pink Rabbit in Italy. I mean, there's been a plethora of clues, all pointing in the direction of a certain former WWE and Universal Champion. As I mentioned, not everyone in WWE was apparently sold on the QR code aspect of the White Rabbit teasers, but those that Fightful have spoken to backstage say it's been a major success and created even more than the intended buzz for the segment and the reveal and this ongoing mystery in WWE. The most talked about thing in WWE right now, which of course is the White Rabbit. Now, Fightful have also learned that WWE creative has been largely hands off with the segments, and most everyone they talk to backstage aren't sure of the small details that are involved. Now, you could make a joke here, couldn't you? You could make a big joke, and certainly in the Vince McMahon era and the Vince McMahon regime, you would say the reason it's so good is because WWE creative has been largely hands-off with the segments. Now, again, that sounds like somebody is involved, or it's teasing someone that in the past hasn't had great things to say about WWE creative. That suggests that the person involved in putting these segments together, their ideas don't necessarily follow WWE creative. I can think of one name in particular who is gone on record, and it's been widely reported that they clashed with WWE creative, and at one point even told Vince McMahon that WWE creative sucked and the creative vision for him and his character sucked when it was really bad, and that's actually preceded his release from the company last year. Who could that be? Who could that be? Hold that thought. Now, WWE higher-ups are clearly aware of plans and how things will work moving forward. Those in the know have claimed, and we have a date now, we have an event when the White Rabbit mystery is finally going to be revealed, because those in the know have claimed that WWE Extreme Rules was supposed to be the reveal of the White Rabbit. Now, Fightful are reporting they were not told if the person portraying this person or this reveal would be there physically or not. And that's key there. The rumor is that Extreme Rules in October, I believe October 8th, is going to be the reveal date of the White Rabbit. However, it hasn't been confirmed if, when this reveal happens, if there will physically be that person in Philadelphia for that event, or if they're just going to be revealed in a video, if they're going to be revealed on the Titantron, if they're going to be revealed in terms of an audio form, maybe just a laugh, or maybe something else, or maybe it's just going to be a mask, or something like that, right? So spoilers ahead once again, spoilers ahead, because we may have even more confirmation of who it's expected that the White Rabbit is, then the White Rabbit will be revealed to be. And it's not too much of a spoiler, I suppose, because everyone kind of knows what the situation is and who they think it's going to be. And Fightful, Sean Ross Sapp, have been on record stating that they believe, from whom they've spoken to, that this person is indeed going to be returning to WWE. But for those who don't know and wish to be spoiled, Fightful are reporting and have been reporting for several weeks that the reveal internally is believed to be none other than former WWE Champion, former Universal Champion Bray Wyatt, making his return to WWE. So that is the latest news regarding the White Rabbit, and it's quite interesting really when you look at it there. I think that, as I mentioned, it makes more and more sense. Take the clues out, take the cryptic stuff out, take the rabbit hole, if you pardon the pun, that we've gone down for all of this. When you look at the finer details from a creative perspective, this makes even more sense to me now. We can talk about clues, we can talk about Wyndham Main, we can talk about promos that Bray Wyatt has done in the past. We can talk about patricide and killing of the father and this, that, and the other. But when I read and when it was reported via Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select that WWE Creative has been largely hands-off with the segments, I went, it's Bray Wyatt. It's Bray Wyatt, because look at the circumstances surrounding his departure from WWE. It was reported, wasn't it, that Bray Wyatt's release from WWE was an anomaly. And by that it was that, yes, they had kind of disguised it as budget cuts, but it didn't make a lot of sense. Bray Wyatt's release was individual. It was on its own. It wasn't in a batch of WWE releases. And you look at the past, look at all of these names that were released over the last 12 to 18 months. They come in packs, they come in bunches, they come in batches. And Bray Wyatt's release didn't come in that. It came on its own. When was it? July, late July, early August of 2021, Bray Wyatt's release. And we went, what? And we have heard some details since then. I don't think we have heard the full story. I don't know if we'll ever hear the full story. But the story that we had heard, I believe it was once again Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, reported that essentially it was a case of WWE saw Bray Wyatt on this big contract and they felt he was no longer worth that value. But the reason why they came to that decision was because he was being perceived as difficult backstage by WWE, because he would openly say to Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard, the creative here sucks. It's awful. The ideas you're giving me for this character are terrible. And he's not wrong. He was not wrong. This is what was from myself. And I'm a big Bray Wyatt fan. And I was a big fan of The Fiend as well. The original idea and conception, the concept of The Fiend, I was a big fan of. I go back to those original Firefly Funhouse vignettes and the transformation from the Mr. Rogers version of Bray Wyatt into The Fiend. I thought it was genius. I think go back to SummerSlam 2019, the first entrance of The Fiend Bray Wyatt is staggering. The people in Toronto are silent and they react once the theme song ends because they've never seen anything like it. And what that got transformed into via the meddling and via the constant interference by people like Vince McMahon, like Bruce Pritchard, was so disappointing. And it for me, encapsulates everything that was wrong with WWE Creative, is that they couldn't let a good idea just organically grow into something. They always had to tweak it. They always had to get their fingerprints on it. Always had to be, okay, it's The Fiend, now he has to wrestle in red lights. It's got to be wrestling in a red light. Why? I don't know. But it didn't help the matches. It hurt the matches. You know, because that was the point of, oh, the Fiend can't have a good match. The Fiend can have a good match. The Fiend had good matches when the light wasn't red. I'm not saying that was the only part of it, but, you know, it was just all of these things, and they turned it into too supernatural stuff. And even the stuff with Alexa Bliss, when they did it with Braun Strowman and it got too goofy, like that was the problem with Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. I know Pritchard's still with the company, but things got too goofy and they stopped being scary. And I'm not saying that I was afraid of the Fiend Bray Wyatt, but when I watched that first entrance for the match he had against Finn Balor in 2019 at SummerSlam, I went, that's different right there. That's edgy. That feels like people haven't seen anything like this before, and they had to ruin it. And Bray Wyatt, as I mentioned, would tell Vince McMahon the creative was rubbish. It was awful. And I think when the decision came of, hey, Bray's on a big contract, you know, we're releasing all of these people, maybe we should get rid of him as well. And you know, even though Bray Wyatt made a ton of money for WWE, this is the thing now as well. This is why it had nothing to do with budget cuts. The Fiend was a merchandise mover for WWE in terms of masks, gloves, you know, comic books, posters, there's any kind of apparel, Firefly Funhouse, the puppets, the sets, everything. It was a license to print money. But because Bray Wyatt had the nerve to criticize Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard's creative vision that was 30 years out of date, when the discussion came up of he's on a big contract, let's get rid of him. That's what it was all about. So once I read that WWE creative has been largely hands-off with these segments, it became very obvious to me that it's Bray Wyatt. And again, it's very obvious it was Bray Wyatt anyway, but it kind of just confirmed it. Because think about it. When Triple H is calling up Bray Wyatt, and he's saying, look, I want you to come back. I want you to be back in the fold. What would be the first thing Bray Wyatt would say? I don't want to work with any writers. I don't want to work with any of the creative team. I want my creative vision to be put on television. My creative vision, I know, works. I don't want to be involved with people scripting my stuff. I don't want to be involved with people telling me my ideas are rubbish or telling me that my ideas don't work or have people tweak things or change things. I'll work with you. I'll work with maybe this person. That's it. That's my creative vision. And that's why, to be honest, that's why this is working. Because it's one man's vision or a couple of people's vision. That's why it's working. It's outside the box. It's unlike what WWE tends to do. It's unlike what WWE has done in the past because it's different. And that's why it's got over. Because it's not traditional. It's not how WWE does things where they just air vignettes on television or he just shows up or they do the same thing. No, this has been organic. This has been, we're not going to put it on television. We're going to play it during commercials, but it's not on TV. But everything's filmed nowadays on social media. If you can get people talking on social media, it's far more effective than on TV. Because when the TV comes and goes, people forget about it the next day. If it's on social media, if people are talking about it on social media, that's real. That's a real buzz right there. Going viral. You go viral via social media by stuff that's not on TV nowadays. It's genius. It's smart. And the QR codes, and as I mentioned, the level of detail. That's what's really impressed me the most about this. The level of detail of some of these clues is just, I mean, you have to do this as well as they've done it. Everything had to be mapped out ahead of time. You know, these towns in Windham, Maine, White Rabbit Records, the songs, all this kind of stuff, the giant pink, rabbit in Italy, and next to it is a hotel called Let Me In, INN. Like, all of that has to be so far mapped out in advance. And again, that's why it's genius. That is why it's genius. And that's why it's got a buzz that it's got right now. And I'm fascinated to see the reveal. Again, my hope is that it's Bray Wyatt. And if it is Bray Wyatt, I don't expect, honestly, to see the same version of The Fiend come out in Philadelphia if he's there. I expect something completely different, a hybrid, something new, because that's what Bray Wyatt does. He does new stuff. He likes to reinvent himself. So I'm curious to see what his head has dreamt up of, because if his head can dream up this in collaboration with Triple H, just think what they can do going forward. Just think what they can do with the budget of WWE going forward. How far can they go with this? It's fascinating. And the proof is truly in the pudding with this, because we saw SmackDown do a huge number on Friday. And I'm not saying that's because of the White Rabbit stuff, but what I am saying is that the peaks in the show were for the Braun Strowman match and for 923. They are two things where the audience expected to hear something about Bray Wyatt or see Bray Wyatt. Braun Strowman versus Otis was watched by nearly 3 million people. because people wanted to see if Bray Wyatt was going to come back or we were going to get another clue. That's called being over. You want to talk about moving the needle or being a needle mover. That's what Bray Wyatt has done, if indeed it is him. So, again, to recap, the expectation is those in the know have claimed that WWE Extreme Rules in about 9 days' time was supposed to be the reveal of the White Rabbit. However, Fightful are reporting they have not been told if the person portraying the White Rabbit would be there physically or not. And as I mentioned, for those who do not know and wish to be spoiled, Fightful once again has gone on the record, like they have for several weeks, that the reveal internally is believed to be Bray Wyatt. Again, there is no confirmation that it is Bray Wyatt. That is the belief of the WWE roster. That is the belief of people backstage, but there is no confirmation. They haven't heard this from sources close to Bray Wyatt. They haven't heard this from sources close to, whoever. The feeling is that, as I mentioned, that it's Bray Wyatt. But again, we'll have to wait and see. It's just, I'm so excited. It must be. I'm really excited. I'm really curious to see where this one is going to go. We know where it's going to go. It's going to be the return of Bray Wyatt. But there you go, guys. That's the latest news and developments when it comes to the White Rabbit. Initially, I did have planned an AEW news video that I have actually recorded. I think instead I'll drop that tomorrow morning because this White Rabbit news came out and it's the biggest thing in pro wrestling right now. We have to talk about it. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.